Hello everybody. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about how trauma creates unhealthy responses and unhealthy coping mechanisms. And the problem with healing after the trauma of being the designated family scapegoat, or from coming from a dysfunctional family, really, is that healing is not linear. And recovery is not an upward straight line. There will be relapses. And it's when those relapses occur that we may inadvertently say, you know what, screw this. All those things that I have been doing so far are not working. The new connections I keep creating are garbage. And the healthy person that I thought I was becoming, it's all a lie, it's all lies. And this feeling happens internally. It directs your actions. And when we relapse like this, we go back to fight or flight mode. We disconnect, just as we did before our healing journey started. And this does happen. And as you ride the wave of that trigger, you may revert back to old unhealthy habits. The old unhealthy habits that led to self-sabotaging behavioral patterns. And you may really start seeing reality through the eyes of that trigger, that all of a sudden the world that you've been recreating for yourself, away from the dysfunctional environment that you left behind, is the cause of your trigger, or the cause of the relapse. And this is how we can potentially self-sabotage the very good things that we are creating for ourselves, the new relationships that we create, the new environment that we create. It's when we go through these, when we get triggered and we go through a relapse, and all of a sudden everything that we're building seems so unsafe. All of a sudden, you may start to push good people away when you realize that they have limits and they have imperfections, out of fear that those imperfections are signs of dysfunction. You may start to feel the need to quit great job all of a sudden, just pack up and go and run. Or maybe you may feel like all of a sudden you may turn towards work and become an workaholic and just, only focus on work and not focus on any other aspects of your life, like neglecting your relationships or new connections or other aspects of yourself. You might feel safer within your felt sense to turn to drugs and alcohol to numb the pain of the trigger, even though you may have been clean for months, And it might also feel safer. I'm talking in the felt sense, right? It's not logical. It's the feeling. It might feel a lot safer to all of a sudden start avoiding people, to start avoiding situation, quit all these good things that we started doing to get ourselves better, and to start isolating yourselves instead. And, it might feel a lot easier also to simply not acknowledge that we're dealing with a trigger, and to find millions of reasons that rationalize why we're doing the things that we're doing, which are actually really not good for us and are hindering all the hard work that we've been doing so far. We may revert to aggression. We may revert to compulsive behaviors like needlessly spending money, emotional eating, starving ourselves, begging for people to rescue us, to the point when we really should be rescuing ourselves, because other people don't have the power to do things for us as we have the power to do the things for us. I don't know if I said that right, but you know my meaning. And all of this, and we can also, of course, escape into a complete fantasy world as well. And completely disconnect from what's going on and just immerse ourselves in video games or gambling, whatever it is that makes us disconnect from reality completely. And all of this happens, when all of this happens and we relapse and we self-sabotage and we sort of self-destruct, then comes the self-criticism. There comes the, I'm a failure, I'm not good, I'm flawed, there's something wrong with me, I don't deserve to have healthy relationships in my life, right? All of that self-criticism, that self-destructive stuff, you know, that we've been working so hard to you know, no longer have, you know, no longer believe. It just becomes absolute reality all over again in our world, you know. And, you know, these self-destructive thoughts and the self-destructive patterns, it becomes a loop that becomes very, it becomes quite, it's a danger actually that we can get caught in that in our healing journey. Our unhealthy coping mechanisms, you know, they reinforce our limiting beliefs, and then our limiting beliefs reinforce our unhealthy coping mechanisms. It's just a loop that goes around and around and around. And so this is why you must become hyper conscious of what your self-destructive coping mechanisms are. Their purpose is to distract you from addressing the real issues, right? And also from processing your emotions. And these unhealthy coping mechanisms can also lead to learned helplessness, you know? And this learned helplessness is the belief that you have no control over your life and that you don't have power to improve things. You don't have any power in your life left. And so first of all, the first thing I want to tell you is that relapses happened to all of us. It's a mistake to think that healing is linear, because it's not. And even though you may have been caught in a trigger and you may have reverted to an old unhealthy pattern in the heat of the moment, this does not discount the hard work that you've done so far. It doesn't make you weak or useless or flawed. You're just a human being who has been through a lot. So take a deep breath and remind yourself that you have been through hell. And you are here, and you're a human being deserving of giving yourself a break. Give yourself a break. Have some compassion towards yourself, okay? And the second thing is actually becoming mindful of the factors that can trigger your triggers. If issues feel too big for you to actually resolve within that moment, then this can point to a sign that you're about to be triggered, that this is going to be a trigger, or that you are triggered. And, you know, the acronym HALT is actually quite excellent for that. It stands for hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. And it represents the common states of being that can play a role in us suddenly reverting back to our unhealthy mechanism. So think about that: hungry, angry, lonely, and tired, okay? Being hungry and tired, it can lead for your body to shut down, okay? And if your body is not working with you, the body and the mind are connected. If your body is hungry, if your body is tired, you know, this can impair your cognitive function. It can impair reasoning. It can impair your emotional regulation and your decision-making abilities. So right there, here's a cue that you need to take care of yourself, and you need to address what your body needs, because that could lead to a potential trigger, or it could lead to potential relapse. Okay, so you gotta take care of yourself. You gotta take care of yourself physically. And, you know, anger, of course, can be a powerful emotion that, if it's left unchecked, it can lead to impulsive and rash actions. Unprocessed anger can latch on to people that are not the source of your trauma, but it can really feel like they are absolutely wrong, like they are trying to hurt you, like they are trying to harm you. It can really feel like that. It becomes really hard after trauma and after experiencing scapegoating to define, you know, to sort of know, make it that line between a person's imperfections and honest mistakes and like actual absolute dysfunction. And this is something that can be a struggle to recognize. So you gotta be able to be careful when you feel that feeling of anger, because it might actually really come from, you know, the trauma from your past, and a trigger might have made that come out. And then you really zoom in on a person that's actually healthy for you, but they have imperfections, they have limitations, you know, so that's something else to watch out for. And when you're feeling lonely, you know, loneliness leads to despair. So being self-aware of the state of your body and mind is really, really important during the process of trauma recovery. And it will help you become mindful when you may be prone to relapsing. And if you feel this coming, you can revert to healthy coping mechanisms. Okay? You can use, there's different kinds of healthy coping mechanisms that you can use. And it's so much easier for the mind to go, no, I'm going to revert back to all the things I mentioned because that feels familiar. It feels right. But during the recovery process, the familiar is not necessarily something that is good for us, you know, because the familiar are coping mechanisms. They came from childhood, they came from teenagehood, they came from times where, you know, we were trying to avoid dealing with a family member that was mentally ill and that was consistently projecting their issues onto us. You know, we were dealing with physical abuse, psychological abuse, so we had to run, we had to lie, we had to learn to manipulate, we had to become really good at sneaking, you know. We had to become really good at fighting, at defending ourselves. So all of these defense mechanisms were a comfort zone during our upbringing, but they become our self-sabotaging behaviors. They become self-sabotaging, you know, false coping mechanisms. So becoming mindful that you're about to get triggered is really important. And then when you do, try and direct yourself towards your healthy coping mechanisms. So, you know, using your sensory coping skills, for example, right? Your sense of touch, taste, smell, hearing, and taste. So step outside, take a walk, feel the sun on your skin or the rain, listen to the birds chirping. I know it sounds silly, but it's true. If you just sit outside in nature a little bit and just pay attention to the life around you, it can be really helpful to calm down. Listen to some music, you know. You also can, it's also really important to provide a physical outlet for your nervous energy, like go running, weightlifting, dancing, yoga, whatever you're into, but find a way to release that energy physically. You can also use creative expression, right? Like painting, writing, drawing. Focus on learning something new, journaling, write down your thoughts and feelings, right? Of course, just be mindful not to turn any of those things into escape mechanisms where you use them and then you use them, but then you never go back and actually address the issue and deal with the problem. And then after that, it's so important that you challenge your negative thoughts. And that's such a hard thing to do, especially when you're alone. But it's so important that you do that because you've been through a lot. It takes time to recover, okay? It takes time to recover. The scapegoat recovery is a long process. Do not dismiss the hard work that you did so far. Do not obliterate what you've done so far. You are, you know, work in progress, okay? And healing is not linear. There will be relapses, there will be, and this is part of the journey of healing. The important thing is that once you recover and, well, once you know, the main trigger passes, you know, that you hold accountability. You know, if there was any casualties, be accountable for your actions. You know, that's really, really important. Accountability is something that our parents never did. You know, that was something that we never got a sorry. And if we did, it was not a sorry. It was more like a sorry that you feel that way kind of sorry. You know, the main thing was the lack of accountability from the entire family system for how, you know, somebody's behavior, the impact of somebody's behavior had on us and how deeply it traumatized us. There was never any accountability where we came from. So, you know, when we have triggers, when we make mistakes, when we become mindful of these things, accountability is going to be a huge opening, a huge door for you that will, you know, bring you closer to healing. Other people might not forgive you, and that's okay. Just like you have the right to not forgive other people that hurt you as well. That's okay. But as long as you hold yourself accountable and that you use your situation, from a place of learning. Look, I gotta tell you this, I make these videos. Why? It's because if I look back at my life, no joke, it was mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake. I mean, there's so many cringe moments, I mean, my goodness, this is, super reactive. My goodness, super reactive, super avoidant. At some point for about 2 years, I was anorexic, and my diet was alcohol and cigarettes. There was so many unhealthy coping mechanisms that led me to self-sabotage, so many aspects of my life. And, I'm quite a late bloomer when it comes to healing. I mean, I'm 44 years old, This is not, I wasn't healthy in my 30s, I was not. And this took a very long time for me to bring myself to a safe space. So, it's so important that you challenge your negative thoughts, no matter where you're at. Because relapses are normal, they happen. Take accountability and move on. Forgive yourself and move on. And the last thing is, do not isolate yourself. Do not isolate yourself. They put you in the role of the family scapegoat, and that means that you have been labeled as the outsider, like you didn't belong. Like you could never be loved for who you are. You always had to change who you were to please. And even when you did change and you made huge efforts, as soon as you made the tiniest mistake, the abuse came back and everything reverted back. I mean, it's crazy making stuff, okay? That it's crazy making stuff that isolates you. And so do not feed that limiting belief that you're alone and that was instilled within you by those people, okay? You can slowly start to take small steps to break that isolation if this is what you're experiencing. Take your time to do it, okay? This is slow. Relationships take time. Healthy relationships take time, okay? But you can slowly make that into a goal and slowly work on taking tiny little baby steps to break that isolation. Because that isolation is precisely how the scapegoats are kept weak, okay? When you slowly start forging connections and reaching out to people, the world really does start looking different. You start seeing yourself differently as well, because you are not what they projected onto you. And so when you start creating relationships, you start seeing that when people mirror back to you, that you're actually a good person, that there's nothing wrong with you, that you have imperfections and they have imperfections, and you can still be friends, you can still have a relationship, you know what I mean? And, you start seeing yourself differently. You start realizing that there's so much more to life than that dysfunctional bubble, right? Where everybody protects the narcissistic or the dysfunctional or the mentally ill caregiver, central family figure. They enable their behavior and they never protected you as a child. And everybody just continues enabling dysfunction and calling that normal. That's their bubble. That's not your bubble. You can recreate your own world away from all of that. And breaking isolation is a really important step you have to take to do that. And so this is what I have to say for today. I hope it helped you a little bit. And listen, guys, remember, I love myself, I trust myself, okay? Repeat over and over, I love myself, I trust myself, and I'll see you soon.